Well, I played bass for 12 years when I first started, so I was pretty much a semi-professional bass player in some different bands, and did some traveling in Ontario, mostly Northern Ontario, back in like 1992, I guess it was, and traveled in a cover band and stuff for about 3 months, and then played in numerous bands, like from high school days right through, and then through the 90s, played in some different bands. I guess around I've always been playing guitar too, so I've always like had an acoustic guitar around and written songs on the acoustic guitar. So I've pretty much always been a guitar player too, but not a lead player per se, but more of your rhythm and songwriter type of guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I started focusing a little more seriously on the guitar itself, probably around 1999 in that sort of time period. And then from then on, I've been focusing on my solo material. A lot of that stuff came about. So.
I'm curious what foundations and benefits starting with the bass first gives a guitarist that people might not think it does.
Maybe a good sense of rhythm, because the bass and the drums always hold down the fort with the music, right? So
Sure.
Good solid foundation, I think, and good rhythm chops. Depending on what style of bass player you are, there's many lead bass players out there too who love to get real fancy. And I was always a solid bass player, a very melodic player, I guess you would say, and tasty sort of feel.
I mean, you describe your sound as kind of like a 70s, 80s rock with a little bit of a modern country mixed in. And you've been influenced by those genres pretty heavily, from what I gather. So I'm interested to find out from you how careful you were when you first started in embracing that influence, but trying to find your own sound. Did you find it difficult to kind of develop your own voice and sound? Were you worried that you were just mimicking some of the influences you had, or was that never a thought? You just played and your own voice kind of developed out of that?
Yeah, I think the latter of what you said. I think in the beginning, you're always a little bit worried that if you write a song and you're like, okay, now is this melody kind of too close to this song or something?
Yeah.
You're always a little bit leery of that. But I think as time progresses with myself, I guess personally, I've gained so many influences over the years that it's sort of like a little bits and pieces of everything. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, oh, that's definitely like this or that's definitely like that. It's kind of a culmination of all of it. So I think that's really helped influence my songwriting and, with everything I've listened to and grew up following along the way.
Is it a matter of comfort level too? Do you feel like now that you have that voice, you can experiment a little bit more? Or did you feel like, the experimentation should start early on in my career and then I kind of settled in?
That's a great question. I think I've experimented kind of throughout the years a little bit, but I tend not to stray too far from my roots and what I really grew up with and what I feel authentic to. I think you really need to find your identity as a songwriter and a musician. So, it's nice once in a while to kind of veer off and try a few different things, but I think eventually it kind of all just comes back to what you're really, where your strong roots are,
I mean, you come from a small town too, which I find very interesting. Do you think that provides you with any advantages as a musician?
Yeah, there's probably some advantages. I think maybe close-knit family ties, maybe, and that's, when you get into a situation with a group of people, you become a family as well, right, with a band or musicians you're playing with. So I think that strong sense of foundation, family, is very beneficial. I don't know if it's any different too much than anybody who's grew up in a city, or, I mean, you have all kinds of space, especially out from where I am. I mean, you had to travel pretty far usually to meet up with other players and musicians and stuff to get to the bigger areas and cities.
You've been performing a long time, and what do you feel like is the key to having a stage presence, and what is something you picked up along the way that maybe you would wish somebody had told you from the beginning?
Well, I think stage presence just develops over time as well. I think in the beginning, you're always very nervous. As me switching from a bass player and not singing lead,
right,
per se, being more of a harmony vocalist, and then switching over to doing my own stuff, and you're becoming the focal point, vocally of the band. You have to kind of rethink how you address the audience and stuff, I guess, and how you kind of keep them involved. I always felt pretty, well, I guess I became more confident at doing it over the years, but I always felt that was important to include the audience and make sure that they feel like they're part of the show as well. Because obviously you don't have a good audience, you don't have a show, right? So
Right. In recording his latest album, The Long Road Home, Cory got to work with legendary producer Ron Nevison, who has been responsible in this business for some of the greatest albums of all time, like Quadrophenia by The Who, and worked with some of the greatest bands of all time, like Heart and Bad Company. Working with Ron in the studio, what is something that you picked up and learned from him and from developing this album that you hadn't had before, that you think now makes you a better musician?
Well, Ron is very big with the vocals, with the lead vocal elements and the singing and the harmonies. So I learned a lot in the studio with him. He shows you how to pace yourself and not tire yourself out vocally, and learning how to sing. And then when you get tired, you take the right breaks, when you're in there recording during the shows. I think that was the biggest thing vocally. I mean, Ron's amazing. He's done so much stuff over the years. I mean, and he's great too, because he doesn't really change. He hears the artist's arrangements of songs, and he'll throw in his ideas a little bit, but he's not like a songwriter's producer so much. He's a producer of the whole picture, right? Mm-hmm. But he was a vocalist way back in the day when he was young too. He was a vocalist, so I think that's probably where he got all that from. So I think I learned a lot vocally from him, and just how to approach it.
That's awesome. You've described yourself as an emotional songwriter. Kind of explain what that means.
Well, I draw a lot from emotional experiences. Everything might not be just a personal experience, but maybe just a feeling of emotion and telling a story at the same time, where it's going to resonate with somebody and make that person kind of understand. It doesn't specifically have to be about me, but maybe it hits somebody else and it's happened to them, an idea in a song or an element of a song. And I think it's all about, the good stories and reaching people that way, having people remember something that's memorable about your music.
Do you have a dream venue that you are looking forward to playing in someday?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of dream venues. I think any kind of stadium venues obviously would be pretty awesome. I mean, but there's a lot of smaller venues that are intimate, which are really cool too. Like there's probably a couple in Toronto, Montreal area, sort of in my general vicinity here in Canada. But I've been at some pretty cool ones. I've been at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, which is
nice.
On the classic Sunset Strip. So that was pretty surreal in many ways to be there.
What do you love about being an indie artist?
Well, you have pretty much most of the control over your career in a lot of ways. There's been many people over the years who've signed some pretty bad deals with record labels that we've heard horror stories about. So I guess it's the control. I mean, not to the point where you don't want to be too controlling on your own destiny either, but to at least be able to know that you're going to be the one that makes that final decision on yes or no for whatever route you're taking or whatever decision you have to make. That's pretty cool.
At this point in your life, do you feel like, I mean, I know you would take an offer if it came to you. I mean, that's a silly notion, but do you feel like at this point in your life that you would know what the right offer is? Yeah,
definitely. I'm pretty grounded now. I mean, when you start out, you're 19, 20 years old, you're trying to break into the music industry. You think, oh, wow, yeah, let's get that record contract or something,
Right.
I mean, yeah, you really look into what I'm going to be dealing with, what I'm going to be getting out of this. And want to make sure, you're surrounding yourself with the right people in anything you sign on to and your decisions that you make, because there's a lot of people out there really not in it for you. They're in it for themselves. So,
yeah,
it's not nice to say, but it's the honesty about anything,
So tell everybody about the new album. What can they expect? What is something that you're really proud of about this album?
I think I'm really proud of the songs that we used on the record. We narrowed it down to 8 songs, and my guitar player on the record, my friend Mark Muir from Cornwall, and I started. We went through the songs, and then we sent the songs to Ron, and we narrowed it down to the 8 songs that I wanted to use. I kind of wanted to get back to that sort of old school record, the old 8 songs on an album sort of deal, and I wanted it to be strong, every song to be as strong as it could and have a great flow. Personally, I don't feel there's really a weak song on there, but that's all up to personal taste with people. So I think it showcases where I'm at again with my songwriting, hence the title of the album, The Long Road Home. It's got that melodic rock overall sound to it. So
I mean, in this day and age, with digital downloading and everything that the music industry has gone through and its implosion, basically, uh, do you really still believe in the album? Do you think the album is a viable tool for an artist?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I come from that old school sort of thought process on that, but yeah, these days a lot of like the younger independent artists are just releasing singles or EPs of,
Yeah.
3 to 6 songs. And I've got a couple of EPs that I've released too, and I've gone that route as well. But when you start writing songs and you kind of feel like, well, I want to get them out there, so you end up having more. So, and if the budget is, if you can make the budget to be able to record as many of them as you can, then I guess you try to do that. But I mean, you can still release each one as a single. It's not a big deal. So,
Right.
But I think it depends on the demographic and who's buying your music anymore, and if they even are buying CDs. That's kind of changed over the years a lot. So.
Well, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, because you kind of said this in and how you developed the title and everything, but I kind of feel like the album tells the whole story, right? It's not just a part of a story; it's a whole story, and you kind of develop what works for that story in telling it and putting all those songs together, right?
Exactly, you're right on there. I mean, these days everything seems so disposable to people. You can just you go online, you click a song, and then within a week it's gone on to something else, or not even a week anymore. It's a couple of days. You see kids these days, and it's just so everything's coming at you all at once. All these songs, and that's great too. But there's so much of it, But yeah, the album it's like you're telling that sort of grand story about everything. And
I'm curious though. You have a young daughter, and if she came to you and said, she wants to get into the music business, what advice or guidance would you provide her to help get into it? Or would you just steer her completely away from it?
Well, she is very musical. She's already picked up. We bought her a set of drums last year Santa got her a set of drums for Christmas last year. And she's also she's singing to all of her shows she watches on TV. And so she's got the bug, so that's great. I think I would just tell her, be true to what you do. Be as honest as you can with your style of whatever whatever music you follow. Just be true to yourself, and that, I think that's going to show to everybody else who's listening. Because if you're not trying to be yourself, I think most people get a shock at the end of it all. Because you watch a lot of these reality vocal shows that are on TV these days, and they're all great. They're cool. A lot of amazingly talented singers that come on. But as soon as they pick that winner, it becomes no longer about that singer anymore. It's everybody in the background who wants they want the vision for that singer now or whatever, and the identity. Maybe you've lost your identity a little bit there. So
yeah, that's tough, and because everybody wants to get discovered, but but it's and that goes back to you being a little bit older and knowing what the right thing is, right? I mean, that's the hardest thing for us as young, for younger people to learn, right? When we're younger, we kind of just want to go for it and we take on whatever comes our way, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the younger generation may miss out on the experiences of the way the industry is set up today, where it's like, this person wins this year and then they're done, and then this person wins next year and now it's on to the next person. Well, where's that person from 2 years ago now? And like, nobody's built up that energy of creating themselves and their identity and then showcasing that to everybody or the world or wherever you're from.